Are you able to see the slide? I'm sharing the
Yeah,
slides.
yeah, I can see it.
Okay, that's great.
So I'll be in and out so I can take care of my baby.
Okay, no worries. That's
Uh,
great.
yeah. So let me mute myself now.
Okay, thank you. Hello, good evening. Hello there, Aderonke. Hello there, Anthony. Hello there, Busayo. Welcome to our session today. You're welcome. We're just waiting for others to join, then we'll start. So we'll give it like 5 to 7 minutes after, then we'll start the session. Hello there. For the ones that just joined right now, my name is Patrina and I am excited for this session. I just want to give us a few more minutes to allow others to join and then we'll start the presentation. If you have friends or family that are interested, don't forget you can share and they can register and join us as well today. We will be starting in 2 minutes at 5 after, so. Okay there. Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrina, as I mentioned. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to join us for the Waterfall versus Agile workshop. I look forward to taking you all through, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. You can use either the Google Slides URL that's presented at the top of the presentation, and what we'll do is for the questions that are being asked, we will try and answer them at the end. So you can hold them till the end. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so let us get started. So thank you once again for joining us. My name is Patrina. I am a business analyst. I've been doing this for about 10 years. I'm located here in Canada, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I have worked for a number of different organizations, nonprofit, manufacturing, as well as oil and gas industries. So I bring along a wealth of experience in regards to different types of projects and the methodologies. So I'm really excited to give you an overview today of Waterfall and Agile. And also I would like to say a big word of thanks to Heels in Tech for organizing this webinar and bringing all of you here to have an opportunity to do a little bit of just learning. And so thank you, Heels and Tech, for this. So our agenda today is going to be looking at the software lifecycle management, an overview of what is Waterfall, as well as what is Agile, and then what are the pros and cons of each of those and why those are important, and the opportunities and the times and types of projects that you would be able to use those methodologies for. And also the time and season where you need to use it. So you might be asking, what is a project? I think it's good to get an overview of what is a project. A project is usually like an endeavor that is undertaken by an organization in order to address a need. So they discover that they have an existing software and the software is coming to end of life, or there's competition in the marketplace and they need to adapt and onboard a new software to allow them to be competitive. So a project is started by an organization to help them compete in the marketplace, and it enables them to be competitive. But the thing about a project is that it has a start and an end date. So it has a beginning and an end compared to operations. So with operations, what you see is that with operations, it's something that just continues on. It never has a start or an end date. So operations are things that an organization does day to day, and it has processes that their employees do day to day. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. So in terms of a team, there is usually, in order for a project to run, there is a project management team that is put together, and it could consist of individuals that are within an organization as well as people that are external to the organization to help them on the project. So what can happen is that with a project, you could have the opportunity as an employee, if you're working within an organization, to be seconded onto a project. And when you are seconded onto a project, then that means that your duties are left on the side. They onboard somebody else to help take care of that, and then you work on a project full time. So in order for projects to be successful, there needs to be a methodology that the project team adopts. And so there are a number of different types of methodologies that you could utilize to run a project. So usually what happens is for the project team that's running the project, they have the opportunity to decide the best way that they will run the project. Also, and one of the ways in which they can use is either waterfall or agile. There are a number of other methodologies that they can use, but usually for software development projects, there are two main kind of areas in which, and those ways are known as the different approaches and the methods through which they run the project. So the reason why we're gathered here today is to have an overview of what is waterfall as well as agile, and then kind of give you some rationale for both agile and waterfall. What are the pros, the cons, how are they run, in what instances you will have them as projects. So I'm going to go into software development. So essentially, these are the main areas in which waterfall and agile are utilized. So with waterfall, we're going to have an overview of what is the software development lifecycle management process, as well as providing you with an overview of what is waterfall. So we're going to start out with the software development lifecycle. What you have with a software development lifecycle is like step-by-step processes and phases. So with the software development lifecycle, it's used within the software industry. So any organization or industry that provides like software to clients, or organizations that internally use software to run their business processes, they utilize a software development lifecycle process. And so it's used within the software industry, and it's used to manage a project. So this is one of the ways in which a software project is managed. So if you are to look at it, the way it is it's broken down. The software development lifecycle is broken down into the planning. Planning and requirements analysis is essentially whereby uh, the requirements for the software for the project are gathered, and it's one of the fundamental stages in software development life cycle. It's usually done by senior members of the team with inputs from the customers. It could be other departments, sales departments, market surveys, or domain experts in the industry. And all of this information is used to plan a basic project approach and to conduct product feasibility studies in regards to enabling the project to go through. So planning allows for quality assurance requirements and identification of risks that could be associated with a project, and it is usually done in the planning stage. So usually within the planning stage, the outcome is a feasibility study, and that's used to define various technical approaches that can be followed to implement the project successfully with minimal risks.
Hi, Petrina.
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah, so for the purpose of those who do not really understand technical aspects, you understand. So let's use the new products that Apple just recently released as an example. So Apple has been a company for some time now, and then they release products from time to time. So at each product, there's always a project group or a project development group that will come up with planning like what Pratina just mentioned. So they will discuss the products they really want to, on how to go about it really. So that's for Apple. And then for the men on the group, I'm sure you're aware of the PS5 that was just released also. That's another project that was worked on in an organization. So for such projects, there's this development life cycle. And as Petrina mentioned, there's the waterfall and then there's the agile. So Petrina can take it from there.
Thank you so much, Bisola. So in regards to allowing an organization to be able to um, create like new products or bring out new features to previous products that they've probably done in the past, they usually will have like a project that they will put into place. So if we even can add on to Bisola's examples for a project, if you think about Amazon or any yes, Amazon would be a good example if you have access to their sites, or even, yeah, I think Amazon would be a good example. So for Amazon, usually what they will do is they have their website, but they usually will have different products that they bring out to the market. So one of the products that they brought out to the market, I think maybe last year, was Amazon Prime. So with Amazon Prime, if you're a member of Amazon and you pay that monthly membership, that gives you access to Amazon Prime movies. It also gives you access to Amazon Prime shipping. So that means that you would get same day or next day deliveries. So you pay a certain amount and then you get a lot of different features. Another possible project example of a product that was also implemented would probably be, what else could I add to it? Samsung, PS. Yeah. Okay. So I like the examples that Bisola gave in regards to PlayStation 4 and even iPhones and Macs and stuff. So usually for those products to come out to market, what they'll do is they'll do some planning in terms of what do we want to see in the next quarter or the next 6 months or the next year. And then what they do is they look at their product features that they already have, and they'll see, okay, so we have certain features or certain functionality for these products. How can we improve it? And so in order for a project to start out, they'll say, okay, so we want to do a product launch in 6 months. So this new product will be new to market. Probably the users haven't used it before. What's the best way we can go about running this project? So then they'll get a team of people together to work on this project. And so, for example, if they have a short time frame, it will depend on the way they will decide to approach the project, as well the types of features that they want to put into the product, as well as the feasibility of getting that product launched out to the market. So if we put into our mind, for example, and keep into our mind either the PlayStation example or any Apple product launch, that will be a good way for us to kind of put into perspective what a project is, and then how we as potential business analysts or project managers would work on a specific project to be able to bring our product out to market. Okay, so so now I'll go into the fact that, okay, so now an organization has decided they're going to have a product launch in 6 months to a year. What they need to do is they need to figure out a way in which they're going to run the project. And so the software development lifecycle methodologies help the project team be able to decide the best approach. So it's about how are we going to do this? What's the best way? How can we work as a team in order to be able to meet our project objectives? So one of the first steps for a project is to do some planning. So with planning, you're going to say, okay, what are the things that we need to do? Who do we need to get on the team? As well as what are the features that we want the specific project or product to have that we're going to bring out to market. Most of the times, if it's something that's totally new, that like a product that we've never seen before, then they will have to figure out a way in which they can work on the product because there are a lot of unknown variables, right? They're thinking there's lots of things that will need to be in place. How best can we approach it? So planning is one of the important kind of phases. Also, another phase is, or step is, that of defining the requirements. So defining what type of features they're going to put in. So I believe with PlayStation, it's something whereby they usually will change either the format of the types of videos or games that you can play on, as well as maybe the types of storage you can get on it, or the type of what you call it, how you can connect with other online members within the different PlayStation kind of ecosystem. There's also what's known as the designing. So after you've defined what you're going to do, then you'll design the best ways in which you can add those features and make everything kind of connect in a way that things will work together well. Excuse me. There is also then the building is another phase. So once the project team has defined what they're going to build, and designing is the how they're going to build it, how it's going to interconnect, who's going to be involved in the launch phases as well, all the team members and all the different groups they need to put in place to make the product launch successful and all the features work well together. So then they'll go about building it. And as they build it, they also go about testing it. So anything that they build, they'll test to make sure that it's working well. Is it integrating well with the old features that were already in the system? And then they'll get the like a focus group or user group together, and that user group will test it to make sure that all of the functionality is working, there are no errors, all of the windows or all of the the buttons are working as needed. And then after they've been able to test it, what they then go to do is they'll deploy it. So in terms of PlayStation, product, the deployment will be getting it out to market. So getting it out to the different retail units, and then they will get it into the hands of the customer to use. So now that we kind of have an idea of what a project is, we'll touch on the fact that in order for an organization to be able to meet their product launch goals by having a product that is ready for the users to use, there are different ways and approaches that they can use to be able to do that. So one of the things to think about is in terms of approach. Approach is how will you do it? How will you as a team that is working on a new product, how will you work together? And based on the requirements of the or of the feature, the requirements of the product that you're building, then you can decide on which approach will fit best. So if you think about it, it's almost like even if we were to look at another example, it would be like if you want to play a game of soccer, there are lots of different tactics you can use with the defenders, with the attackers, and with the midfielders, right? There are different arrangements that you can use in order for you to play the soccer game to be successful. So you could think about it in terms of like the placement of the players and how the team works together in order to kind of attack against the other team and get in to be able to, onto the other side, to be able to score a goal. So one of the types of methods or strategies that a project team can use is Waterfall. There's another one called Agile. And we also have Scrum and Lean. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of delve into each of them, especially Waterfall, Agile, and Scrum. And then we'll have an idea of how best to use it. So in this area, we're going to look at Waterfall, and we're going to kind of go over what is the waterfall approach, the waterfall way of running a project. What are some of the benefits to using waterfall as an approach to running a project, as well as what is the potential impact of using waterfall. And then we'll move on to comparing it with Agile later on. So what you have with Waterfall is that it's a step-by-step process. So usually what will happen is with Waterfall, it's used in organizations where they have, the organization has an idea of the exact requirements that they need to get into place. It's usually used within organizations that are a bit older, that have a lot more regulation. So for an example, a bank might use a waterfall approach to running a project. You might ask why a bank will use like a waterfall approach. Well, one of the things is that a bank has a lot of strict rules and regulations as to how things need to be done, how people's information needs to be stored, how banking information needs to be stored. And so with a bank, a lot of projects that they want to do. So if they want to, for example, be able to implement a new way for you to bank. So for example, if a bank didn't prior to this project, they didn't have the ability for you to pay online. Like you would probably have to go in with a bank book and go to the teller with your bank book, and any transactions you want to do, they will do that and update your physical bank book, and then you'll be able to take that with you. So if a bank decided that, okay, you know what, it's costing us a lot of money to have physical bank books, because we have to order it, we have to print it, we have to maintain it, store it. So now they would have done, for example, an analysis to say, okay, so now we want to make sure we no longer have any bank books. We want everybody to do banking online. So if they were to get a project team together and worked on it methodologically, they would do all of the requirements gathering up front. So, and they would do all of the requirements gathering up front. They know how many customers they have that have bank books. They would do like an analysis of the timeline for getting rid of the bank books, the notice they have to send out to people, and all of that. So they would break out that project in sequential step-by-step process. So they would gather all the requirements, they'd talk to all the different branches, get all their information, and then they would do the documentation in terms of what they would need to have in place to take away the bank books and stuff. And so usually it's sequential in nature. And it's good for small kind of projects and where there's less uncertainty in requirements. So as I discussed earlier, with the waterfall, it goes from one phase of the project to another phase of the project. So it initially will start out from requirements, so getting all the different things they need to put together to make the product. And then once they're okay and it's been approved that, okay, we have everything we need to build the product successfully, then they go into the design phase. So then they'll design the workflow of how the new process will be run, as well as the new features of the online portal that they will use and have their customers use. And then what happens is that the developers will then build it, and then they'll implement it and make sure that all of the features that they need are there. So if it's for a customer being able to go and bank online, it will be that the customer will have the ability to log into the system. The customer will be able to check their bank balance. They'll be able to pay any bills that they need to. So then they'll build all of the different features that they need. And once they build it, the project team will then make sure that they test the system, the new online banking portal. They'll do it so that they can test it. They'll run some tests with dummy data to be able to test it and make sure that it's ready. Any issues that they have, they work with the development team to be able to resolve any of their issues. And once they're happy with it and it's passed different testing, then they go into deploying it. So what they'll usually do is they'll have like maybe a month to the time that they'll launch the product. They'll start creating like a communication piece to let people know, we have this new product that's coming out. These are the steps that you need to do in order to be able to access it. And this is the date and time that it's going to be put out. And then once they put it out into the larger space, then what they'll do is then start maintaining that online portal. So they'll maintain it to make sure that it continues to work the best way that they need. So, so with Waterfall, the good thing is from one phase, so each step is a different phase. It's broken down in a sequential fashion, and the next step doesn't start until the first step is completed. And with Waterfall, sometimes what will happen is that because unfortunately you gather all of the requirements at once, you know, and usually it's like for a longer project, like so they could start the planning and then the project could be implemented 2 years down the line. If you think about it, like for example, if you want to go and and build a house or something as another example, right? The time frame for building the house could be a year or 2 years, depending on what you're going to put into the house. But in terms of software, what will happen is maybe by 2 years, when the product is put into the market, you know, like a lot of things change, right? So for example, with COVID, the way that it happened, a lot of things, maybe products or services that they were looking to implement, they had to change, like maybe their features or the way that the product would be created. And so with Waterfall, what happens is it doesn't allow you to handle any change in the environment quickly, you know, so it's good for environments where it's highly regulated and there's not going to be like a lot of change. Okay. So let's look at what are some of the benefits of using Waterfall. Waterfall is usually good because it allows a project team to easily manage their work and manage, and it's usually good for smaller projects. And it's great because all of the steps and stages are clearly defined. So you know the type of resources or the team members that you need to have at each stage. With Waterfall, you do a lot of documentation. So with Waterfall, you're usually, because before each stage can move to the next, you have a number of meetings, you make sure all of the requirements are documented, you've agreed on the way in which you move forward for each phase. And so there's a lot more documentation with Waterfall. So if you're to ask what is the impact of Waterfall or how can Waterfall...
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Hello? Yeah,
Hello.
please can you flash the previous screen? The
Go back.
previous slide, please. Yeah, just a bit. Thank you.
Is it this one?
Yes, it is. It's fine.
Okay, I'm recording, so I'll make sure that I have this in place. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Let's go to... So continuing on from, in terms of talking about how how best or the times in which you can use Waterfall. It's good for public sector organizations. So it's good for organizations that are not profit driven or public, because it's more used for organizations, as I mentioned earlier, that are not profit driven, and that are more regulated. An example of an organization that would benefit is United States Department of Defense or the Nigerian government, based on the different areas that they use. But with Waterfall, it's really good if you're in an environment where you know that it's highly regulated and you have standard processes and procedures that you have in place. So now that we've talked about the sequential nature of Waterfall as an approach, so with Waterfall, just to summarize, with a Waterfall project, the way in which you go about building your product is that you take your time, you do every phase. Once you're satisfied with each phase, then you move on to the next. So now we're going to go into Agile. So with Agile, even in the word, what it says is it allows for flexibility, agility, speed. So what we're going to talk about in this next section is we're going to ask the question, what is Agile? And we're going to answer that. We're going to look at what are the benefits of Agile. As well, we're going to break it down and look at what are the impacts of Agile and compare that to Waterfall. So you notice how the Waterfall was more step by step by step. The approach, the Agile approach, is a lot more flexible. So in terms of how things go about, it starts out with, so there is a planning. So with Agile, you plan. You first start out with planning, similar to Waterfall, but you start out with planning. Then you go into design. Once you design, then you go into develop. As well, after developing, you test, and then you deploy, and you review, and then you launch. So, but the thing with Agile is that it's broken down into smaller pieces, smaller phases, you know? So all of the processes of planning, design, all the way to launch happen in cycles. So it happens in sprints, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But the beauty of Agile is that you break the work down into smaller, more manageable pieces. So if, for example, if we use the Apple product, like let's use the example of Apple MacBook or whatever, right? So in older versions, they had like functionality that could let you do a lot of different things, but in order for Apple to build a new MacBook, what they did, or how they broke it down, was they broke it down into smaller iterations. So if you look at the overall journey of the Apple products, they usually, each product that they've provided, the next launch or the next year or 2 years from then, they create an iteration of that product, right? So it goes from the iPod all the way to the iPhone, to the then it moved to the MacBook and different versions, right? But if we look at their iPhone, they have different versions. It's now almost to, is it 10? Or maybe it's more, but each version has different features that they add to it. And with Agile, how they break it down is we have some functionality that we want to build into the iPhone. What we're going to do is we're going to add those features in, and then we'll put it to the market. We'll do a test. We'll see, does the market like it? Are the customers happy with the product? Are there a lot of complaints? What are the complaints? And then they'll take the feedback from the customers, and then they'll go back to the drawing board and then make some iterative changes. So as I mentioned with Agile, it's about shorter development life cycles. You know, with Waterfall, it's one whole big, long development cycle, whereas with Agile, it's broken down into shorter and shorter development cycles. So this is another way of looking at it. So with Agile, you have the plan, the build, the test, the review. This is one cycle, right? Then you'll have, once you've built, once you've had it in one sprint, you work on the sprint cycle, and then from that one sprint, then you review, and then you plan for the next sprint. You build, you test, you review. So it's kind of like multiple cycles. And this example that's using Scrum. So you saw how here we have plan, build, test, and review. So you'll just take a small subset of work that you're going to work on. Then you build it. You build those features in it. You test it. Then you review it. And then once you get feedback on that, then you go for the next sprint. So that's what is broken down in Agile using Scrum into different sprints. So what happens is each sprint, there's like a release of incremental functionality for the product. So it's broken down into multiple sprints, and the sprint cycles are usually 1 to 3 weeks long, but the work is done in a way that makes the project team be able to deliver value. So we'll look at that more. So with Scrum, in terms of the project team, it's made up of 3 key roles. So there's someone called the product owner. So the product owner is the person that says to the team, hey, you know what? These are the features that I need. Let's say in the PlayStation 5, these are the features that I need the PlayStation to have, the type of graphic cards I want, the type of memory that I want, the type of the speed of the PlayStation. These are the things that I want, and I wanted to, maybe you can, I'm not too familiar, but I'll look it up and see what else they have. But you know, like in terms of the feature of the product, right? So the product owner is the main person that determines what the features are of the product. Then we have the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master is like a servant leader. So is a bit similar to a project manager, but in Scrum, the Scrum Master is more making sure that the team is able to work effectively together. He helps lead the different ceremonies that we're going to talk about later. And then the Scrum Master also makes sure that any blockers that the team has, he's able to, he's essentially a blocker remover to enable them to do the work. So essentially the Scrum Master is the one making sure that the team works effectively together and that they're not distracted from the work that they're doing. The different planning, building, testing, and deploying and reviewing that they're doing. And then the third kind of key role is the team. So with the team, the rest of the team, it includes like the development, the developer, it includes analysts, includes quality assurance stakeholders, it includes it also includes business analysts as well. So these are the members. Usually a Scrum team is made up of 6 to 10 members that are working working on a sprint. So in Agile and Scrum, there are some key documents and artifacts that that help them do their work well. So this is back to the approach. So you saw how Waterfall, it was very document heavy. They would have a lot of meetings, document the different decisions that they made in those meetings, about the functionality, the different phases that were coming up and stuff. Whereas within Agile and Scrum, the artifacts are smaller. So first off, we have something that is known as the product backlog. So if you ask what is the product backlog, it's essentially it's like a prioritized list of the different functions of the product. So if we were to go back to our iPhone example, an iPhone, usually a phone or an iPhone per se, what it does is it has the ability for you to call and to send and to send and receive calls, send and receive texts, be able to play music, be able to explore the internet using different browsers, be able to take videos and pictures. And so for our example for the iPhone, the product backlog for the iPhone would include the feature sets written in user stories in how, whereby it would outline the different functionality of the iPhone that they want to build. And so the product backlog contains a list written in user story format of the items of the features for the iPhone. So another key document is something called the sprint backlog. So whereas the product backlog includes everything, like the whole wish list of all the features and functionalities that they want, what happens is that the sprint backlog breaks down the list further and has certain amount of items within the sprint that the team is working on. So with the sprint backlog, remember I was talking about the different iterative phases of the sprints, the different colors, the purple, the blue, the purple, the blue of the different sprints. So each of the sprints, they have its own individual backlog, and that is the list of the work that the team members are working on for that particular period of time or that particular sprint. And then these contain the user stories for each sprint. I will break it out further in a few more slides. And we also have another key document, which is a burn down chart. And this one lists out, go back. So the burn down chart lists out the tasks that the team is working on, and it goes down to 0. So as I mentioned, the sprint backlog contains a list of user stories, and user stories are, if you think about it, it's like it's essentially breaking down, as I mentioned, the features. So if we use the iPhone example, how the user story is written out is it's broken down into, because it's broken down into who we're building that particular feature for, what we want that feature to do, as well as why we want them to do that. So usually in Agile, we break it down based on the different personas or actors that we're working for. So for an iPhone, as an example, we are the consumers. So they would say, as a consumer or as a customer, the project team is thinking about how best we want the iPhone to be able to send and receive messages. So for a sprint, what they will do is say, okay, so for this sprint, we're going to work on 4 to 5 features for the iPhone. And we're working on it in terms of focusing on the end user customer. So a user story for us as a customer for send and receive is, as a user or as a customer, I need or I want to be able to send and receive calls so that I can be able to use my iPhone effectively, or I want to be able to connect with my friends and my family. So you could say, as a customer, I want the send button, or I want to be able to send messages to my family so that I can keep in touch with them, right? So it's usually looking at it in terms of who the user, what you're looking for, and why. Why are you, or what are you trying to achieve? So why do you need that feature in order to achieve your goal? So with Agile and Scrum, there are a number of different types of meetings that the project team has. So there are 3 types of ceremonies or meetings. So, when I break down ceremonies, it's essentially the way in which the team does their work. So how they go about getting started on their work, and then how they function within each sprint to achieve their goals for the different features that they're building for whichever product they're working on for a project. So the first main important meeting within Agile and Scrum is sprint planning. So what usually happens here is with sprint planning, you have the product owner, you have the Scrum Master, and you also have the team, the project team. And they meet in a sprint planning session to be able to plan out which user stories they want to work on for that particular sprint. And they also, as a team, they work to get a good understanding of the size of the stories that they want to work on. And then they estimate the duration and the feasibility of the user stories. So a sprint planning meeting could usually be maybe 2 to 4 hours. It could be 2 to 4 hours depending on the size of the team and the amount of user stories that they need to go through. And there are a number of different strategies that they use to be able to estimate the size of the user stories. One of them is something called planning poker. So what that is the team members within the group, they have a deck of cards, and the deck of cards, each team member has a deck of cards, and it goes from 1, I believe, to 21 or something like that. And so what will happen, you'll have everybody in the team, and they will look at the user story and take a time to kind of come up with an estimate, and then all of the team members will then present what they think that user story is worth, or how much effort that user story is. And then once they do that, if the team members have numbers that are very, very, very different from each other, then the team members that has the lowest number and the one that has the highest number, they have to discuss with the team members and explain why they think it's very hard work, or why they think it's not too much work. And then they'll go through the process again, and they'll try and convince each other of how much it should be, and then they'll go through again. And so the aim of the planning POCA sessions within sprint planning is to get all of the team members to kind of have an understanding, a similar understanding of the effort of the work of each of the user stories. Another one of the ceremonies that takes place is something called a daily scrum. So this is great for Agile and Scrum because what it does is it gets all of the team members together, usually at the same time and place. And what they do is they talk about what they did yesterday in regards to the user stories, what was their progress in regards to the tasks that they were assigned, so what they did yesterday, what they plan to do today, and then if they have any blockers. So usually each team member is given about a minute to talk high level about the tasks and the progress that they had on those tasks. And the daily scrum is usually broken down into about 15 minutes.
Hi, Petrina.
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, I'd like to pass in some information. For
Yes,
those that
please.
are not, for those that are not jotting down, please jot this presentation down, because these are the questions asked on the Scrum exam day. And I know how much consultants charge for certification for preparing to write, for you to prepare to write your Scrum exam. Some charge as much as £800, and Petrina is giving us this information for free. So please do not take this for granted. All right, so Petrina, please go ahead.
Thank you, Bisola. Okay, so of the 3 ceremonies, you have the sprint planning, you have the daily scrum, and then you also have the sprint review or retrospective. So this one is key because, you know, as I said, this is the beginning of the sprint for the team. So usually this happens at the beginning of the sprint for the project team. So they plan their work. So essentially this is planning of work. And then the daily scrum is the daily accountability of the progress for your different assignments and tasks, and then a sprint review. So this one is quite key. This is very, very important, excuse me, for the team, because what happens is that this sprint review is when you get the product owner, you get the scrum master, the project team, the scrum team together, and usually, as I mentioned earlier, they're different sprints, right? So for each sprint of work, usually if it's 3 weeks, so let's say after the 3 weeks, what happens is before you start a new sprint or a brand new sprint, what you'll have is this sprint review. So the sprint review is a time for you as a team to get together and present the work that you've done over that 3-week period to the product owner. So the product owner is usually the one who's the voice of the customer, and he's the one going for the different functionalities. So essentially, he's the one saying to the team, this is what you're going to work on. So a sprint review is an opportunity for the team to get together and demo what they have been able to build so far. And then there's also a sprint retrospective. So after they've demoed it, they get feedback from the product owner, then they move into a retrospective. So retrospective means the ability to look back and reflect. So the team together, what they do in this retrospective is they do a review of how the sprint went, if there were any challenges that they saw as a team, if there were any things that they enjoyed doing as a team to work towards being successful in their sprint. And then also with the retrospective, it also gives them the opportunity to come up with any feedback for improvements that they could use to be able to work effectively and better and faster for the next sprint. So these 3 ceremonies are very important for each sprint, and they repeat each sprint. So the goal of the retrospective is to be able as a team to get a better understanding of the work, a better understanding of working together as a team, and then review their processes and procedures to come up with new ways of working that can help them work faster and provide value faster. So in terms of Agile and Scrum, there are a number of key benefits, right? So one of the key benefits of Agile is that there is transparency, right? And you might be asking, how and why is there transparency? The way in which transparency comes about is because the team works on a small amount of work, and then they go and they present it to the customer, the product owner. So the product owner is able to get feedback, and the team is able to get feedback much quickly, you know, as opposed to waterfall, whereby you build everything and then you go and you present it to the customers, and they might come back and say, hey, this is not what we want. So with Agile and Scrum, it allows for transparency. And another one is that the cost and schedule within Agile are more predictable. So it's shorter times, working with a smaller group, and you're working on smaller, more specific functionality. So that helps you as a team to be able to break it down in a way that makes it more predictable. So the cost is more manageable. And then the good thing about using Agile and Scrum is that change is allowed. So if, for example, in Sprint 1, the product owner looks at the product and looks at the iPhone, and he looks at it and he says, oh, I asked for send, and it's sending, but it's not sending the way that I wanted. So then with that prototype, he can give you feedback on how he wants it changed, and then the team will take that feedback into consideration for Sprint 2, and they'll work to update it that way and make sure that it works the way that they want it. Whereas with Waterfall, change is not so, it's kind of costly, right? Also with Agile, there are quality improvements. So it allows you to improve on your quality of work and product and features as you go along through the different sprints. So now we've kind of talked about Scrum and Agile. Now we're going to kind of delve a little into the workflow, just so we can get a better understanding. So as I mentioned, you have the product backlog. This one is with the product owner. You have the product backlog. So the product owner usually is the one that kind of owns the product backlog. He understands exactly all the types of features and the priority of the user stories that he wants to work on. So the product owner with the Scrum Master work to look at the product backlog, pick those items, and help the team work on it within each sprint. And the product backlog contains a list of user stories and features, even some technical features. But the key thing about the product backlog is that it contains a list that is prioritized in order of importance to the product owner. Also within Scrum, we have sprint planning. So sprint planning, as I mentioned, this is where the Scrum team, along with the product owner and the Scrum Master, they meet to discuss the top priorities for the upcoming sprint that they're going to run. We have the sprint backlog, and the sprint backlog is similar to the product backlog, but it's the prioritized items and feature sets and user stories for the respective sprint that is going to be run. And then we have a sprint. So a sprint is a period of time between 1 week to 3 weeks. Usually the team that's working on the project, they will determine the length of time in which they will work on a sprint. And so within the sprint, the team works out of a prioritized sprint backlog where they have all the user stories that they're working on within the list, within the week, or within the sprint. And then their progress is measured through the daily Scrum sessions that they have, where they are able to review their work and then talk about the work that they plan to do and if they have any issues. So the key is that for each sprint, there is a goal and an outcome. So the goal is to have an item that is potentially shippable. When we say an item is potentially shippable, what we mean is that the item the item is able to be delivered in the form that we've packaged it. And with Agile and Scrum, usually the overall goal for the project team and the Scrum team is to have a product that is that's able to meet the minimum viable product. So they want to create a product that has the minimum features that will enable them to be able to ship it out to the customer. And each sprint, they're working on improving the MVP, which is the minimum viable product, right? So the outcome of each sprint is you're working as hard as possible on each of your individual tasks so that you're able to have a potentially shippable product that you can send out. And then within the Scrum workflow, you have a sprint review after you've been able to deliver your potentially shippable product, MVP. You review how you worked as a team, and then you come up with suggestions for ways you can work on the next sprint much better. So in this section, I want to kind of drive some of the points in terms of how our organizations and which types of organizations are using Agile to make an impact. So what we're seeing is that some organizations that were more traditional and older are now adopting Agile. And for example, the National Bank of Canada is adopting Agile in some of the products and processes that they have. Another organization that's adopting is British Telecom. Also Cisco. So now that we've talked about waterfall, I'm sure maybe it might have already escaped you. So we're just going to do a quick comparison and review of both waterfall and agile. So in terms of how we can compare the two, waterfall and agile, we can look at it in terms of the life cycle, the way in which the project is managed. So with waterfall, it's structured step by step sequentially, and it has only one software development lifecycle, only one iteration. The phases are fixed, and it's used when you don't need the ability to adapt quickly to changes in the environment, right? Whereas, just 1 minute, please. Okay, so I think what I'll do is, I guess I'll end it here. And I want to open it up for questions. So feel free, you can take your time, you can unmute yourself, or you can indicate through raising your hands, and then we can go through your questions. Okay, Christy, please unmute and go ahead, please. We'll start with Christy. Christy.
Okay, good evening. Thank you so much for this session. Quite enlightening. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I know in the course of your presentation, you mentioned that banks and highly regulated environments will rather use a waterfall.
Yes, please.
because of documentation that are already predetermined. However, I know in your example for Agile, you mentioned that the Bank of Canada has switched over to using Agile software. So why would they make such a decision, saying that they are a bank? What could have led to such change? I would like to know.
Okay, that's a very excellent question. So usually what will happen is, for example, so we have Waterfall, we have Agile, but some organizations, even for example, also this national bank, so it's our one of our main banks, right? So what they could use is a system called a hybrid. So that will mean that they will still be using Waterfall, but then there'll be some features within their project that they'll break down into Agile. So for
Okay.
them, because they are highly regulated, they can't change as fast, but because they also know that sometimes there might be a project that they need to implement in shorter iterations so that they can get feedback, then they'll have like a hybrid.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
No worries. Okay.
Someone is asking what the question was.
Oh, okay. So Christy was asking about the fact that in my example about organizations that are adopting Agile, I used the example of the National Bank of Canada. So earlier on, I had spoken, so she wanted to know why, even though organizations that are highly regulated like a bank, which would usually use Waterfall, why my example of National Bank was using Agile. And so I was trying to explain that sometimes, even though if they are regulated, you can have some organizations that the way that they manage projects is they'll do a hybrid. So they'll have some parts or some areas within the ways that they work be Waterfall, and then some parts of the project also be Agile. So it's a mixture of the Waterfall and the Agile. Let me check the chat. I hope that helps. Okay, please, Dami, you can unmute and speak. Ask your question. Dami Larry.
All right. Yeah,
Hello, can everyone
thank you. Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, so I wanted to contribute to Christy's question. So for a bank, you know, a bank is a bigger organization, and then there's so much bureaucracy, which means that the process by which implementation of project will be, the implement project will be very slow. So which is why they adopt the hybrid. But for a smaller company and maybe a technology-based company, a technology-focused company, they can easily move to Agile. That's number 2. Then number 3, Agile is kind of new, which is why companies are hiring Scrum Masters. Scrum Masters understand the need to save time and cost. So anybody that understands Scrum and that understands So anybody that understands Scrum and anybody that understands how to work in an agile environment is a hot cake right now, because you know they were used to working with the waterfall, which is what the waterfall methodology. So for example, you want to build a car, they won't test the car until the car is completely built. You understand? But in an agile environment, they'll work with the brake. Okay, is the brake okay? Perfect. Then they will go back again and start working with the engine. Okay, is the engine okay? Fine. Okay, so let's move to the car seat. Okay, so is the car seat okay? So they will break everything into smaller bits until it is ready, which is where the minimum viable product comes in. But for waterfall, they can spend 10 years working on the project. In fact, so at the end of the day, they'll now realize that one part of the car is not functioning. You'll now start all over again, thereby wasting
Going back.
money and all of those things.
Time.
So which is why everyone should write their Scrum Masters, should understand how to work in an agile environment. And then there's nothing like a manager managing everybody. You need to understand your role. Everybody is active. Everybody is active. You are busy working. So there's nothing like this person did not do so, and so. That was why the break did not work. No, everybody is responsible for the implementation of the project, which is why Agile is trending now. You understand?
Okay. Can we put it in a way like, okay, Waterfall is analog while Scrum Agile is digital?
Yes, something like that. Something like that. Something like that. It's just like they work from home now. Some bigger companies, look at Victoria's Secret, for example. They are folding up. So many bigger companies are folding up because they didn't quickly adopt some things they also have adopted. You understand me? Yes. But smaller companies were easily able to adopt easily. And I don't blame them. There's nothing like let's wait for the manager to approve so and so. They can see that this is where the work is going, and then they move ahead. Yes, they shift.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I believe Damilare had his hand up, so you can go ahead.
Okay. All right, good evening.
Evening.
Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. Okay, I'll go straight to my question. While you are mentioning the key documents, when you're talking about the product backlog and the sprint backlog, you mentioned some things like persona and user stories and the likes. So what I want to ask is there a similarity between Agile and design thinking? Because I discovered that design thinking is almost, it has some steps that I am seeing also here. So is there a similarity between Agile and design thinking, and can they be fused together to use to make it work?
I would look at design thinking as the way of maybe problem solving for how to create the solution. So it would be like a way in which you would be able to kind of design out the product. So some of those maybe thinking and principles might be similar to the Agile way. I believe design thinking is used in projects in a way in which someone who's kind of taking courses in design thinking will be thinking about how to design something, right? So I'm not... Okay, hold up. Just 1 second, please. 1 minute. 1 minute. Hello? Hi there. Sorry about that. Just had a visitor. So I would say in terms of how I was discussing it, design thinking is I guess it would give you like practical ways of designing. I'm not so sure what all of the artifacts are, but I would believe that if you've taken courses in design thinking or learned about the approach of design thinking, it would highly help you within an agile project environment. Does that answer your question, Damilare?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. So please feel free. We have a few more minutes. Any questions you want to ask about the Canadian environment? In terms of business analysts, project managers, Scrum Masters, product owners, as Bisola mentioned, a lot of organizations are moving more towards utilizing Agile in their project in their approach of running projects, because they understand that the environment is quite volatile. They also understand that there are a lot of changes that happen within an organization, and even internally as well as externally. And using our example of COVID, like a lot of organizations had to find ways in which to iterate how they do business, especially organizations where a lot of employees were mandated to work from home. In the COVID situation, in order to be responsive to the need to keep everybody at home, a lot of organizations started up projects, and they had to think of ways to iterate and create systems that would allow all their employees to be able to successfully work from home. Okay, so I have a question here from Anthony about, is Agile almost similar to Scrum? Yes, I would say Agile is similar to Scrum, but it's just another approach. So it's another way of how you break down the work. And Scrum is an offshoot of Agile, but Scrum is the way that at least the ceremonies and the artifacts that I discussed, those are used in a Scrum way in order to be able to run a project. Another way or another example of Agile and even Scrum is Kanban. So that one, there are a lot of different ones, but in terms of high level, the simplest ones are the Agile and Scrum. So I'm just looking in the chat now for the questions. One of the questions that I got from Ozofu is in regards to what certifications do I need to be a business analyst? So I'll bring it out to the rest of you. So in terms of business analyst, there are a number of certifications. In regards to how much experience that you have as a business analyst, the IIBA, which is the international body for business analysis, they have 3 certificates. They have the CCBA, ECBA, I think, and then they have the CBAP. I think CBAP is the one that most people know. So it's Certified Business Analyst Profession. And for that certificate, usually they recommend that you have 5 years working experience, as well as a certain number of hours of working in the different phases of business analysis tasks. But if you're looking for other certificates that will help you be successful on the journey as well, you could also look at the Scrum Master certificates. So we have the Scrum Master SCM certificate. We have the Scrum Product Owner certificate. So that's the SCPOC, or you could have the Agile certificate. So there are a number of different certificates that you could take. So in terms of getting a business analyst role, I might recommend getting like the Scrum certificates, product owners, Agile Scrum ones first to start out. So if you don't have a background in IT, it is possible for you to do the Scrum exam. I would actually even recommend it, because what will happen is if you're able to take a Scrum course, usually how it is they have a Scrum course as well as the certificate. And if you take the course, it kind of nicely lays out the Scrum processes, the ceremonies, who's involved, roles and responsibilities, as well as the artifacts in more detail. That will give you a better understanding of it, and you going and taking the exam to get the certificate would also help you, because there are employers that are always looking for people that have these expertise. And if, for example, you're on LinkedIn, it's a great way to kind of beef up your profile, to have these different certificates, shows different competency levels.
Okay, yeah, to answer his question, let me check his name again. Okay, Ozofu. Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, you can actually write the Scrum exam, but I would advise that you join our class, which is ongoing, although it will soon round up, where you learn the practical and hands-on of how it works. There we discuss live projects, and then after which we also recommend that you write the Scrum exam. For people, you can find out some people who do not have a background in technology, in IT, have enrolled and then they are doing perfectly well. That's number one. Then number two, as a business analyst, really most of what you need are soft skills, and you already have developed that skill on your former job or as an employee or as a business owner. So what you actually need is just some few tweaks here and there, brushing up here and there, which we offer. And afterwards, you prepare to write your exams. The user story questions, the product owner you saw on Petrina's screen are actually questions, the real life questions that the Scrum certification asks. But you won't understand it until you have gone through the class, which is why I advise that you go through the class, or you prepare to go through the class and then write your certification. I hope we've answered your question. I hope you've answered your question. Yeah, okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Welcome. Okay. Thank you all for coming. Does anybody have any additional questions about being a business analyst, opportunities here in Canada? I would say the job market is opening up. I'm part of a few groups, and every day I'm seeing at least 5 to 6 opportunities that are coming through, which is pretty good overall. So there are lots of opportunities. I'm even sure in Nigeria there are lots of opportunities as well. And I highly recommend it. Business analysis, Scrum Master, Scrum Product Owner. Those are really great kind of career paths to move towards.
Can you please tell us about one of the projects you worked on?
Okay, so
maybe an agricultural product.
I'm sorry?
Maybe an agri company, for instance. Agri is trending in Nigeria, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh, okay. Well, at least in terms of where I work at the moment, we are a fertilizing company. So we mine the we mine the minerals that go into fertilizers. So at least one of the projects I'm working on is not the downstream, but more like midstream, whereby I work to support the engineering and product managers from the different plants, because we have lots of plants all over. So one of the projects I'm working on is a project to source for a brand new project management tool. And so the thing is our system, we've had it for about 3 years, but one of the things we're noticing is that it's not allowing us to be agile and be responsive, and it's not allowing our project managers to do their work. So it's almost causing blockages in their work. So the project we're working on is sourcing for a brand new project management tool. So for that, we've put out a request for proposals from different project management companies, and we've gone through the process whereby we've looked at the requirements, we've looked at the different features of the different project management tools, and we've narrowed it down to 3. So with the 3 that we're working with, we're just in the phase whereby we're speaking with them and trying to understand how we're going to run our project. And so it's going to be a bit hybrid. Waterfall / Agile is the way that we're approaching the project. But because we have a lot of stakeholders and they're geographically located, we're doing it in a phased approach. So that we make sure that we get all the requirements. But in terms of getting our application in place, we're working to create a minimum viable prototype first. And then from there, we'll start deploying it to the different locations. So with that project, it's about a team of maybe 15. We are a team of 15, and we have, because we're doing a hybrid, we have a steering committee. So they're the ones that we go to every 2 weeks. We provide them with updates on our progress. But then we also have smaller working groups. And these smaller working groups we're the teams that are doing a lot of the analysis and the negotiation back and forth with the external vendor. So that project is going very well. We are on track, and but the thing is, there are lots of challenges that came up with COVID. So instead of making it longer, we're trying to get as much value out of it. Sorry, I'm just seeing another question. So this one is, what are the financial implications in regards to Scrum Master certificates and classes? I have an MS in construction management, and I would like to get certificates in project management. So in terms of okay, Bisala also says we can also prep for project management. Yeah, so I think, Bisala, would you have more information on that? Would you like to talk to that piece?
Okay, yeah, I already replied him as regards the cost for the next class.
Oh, okay.
And then you can, yes.
Okay.
And then for the Scrum Master, they can prepare by themselves, but if they would like for us to coach them one by one, it's not free, because it requires that you download the Scrum guide, and then we put you through each topic, which is going to take a lot of our time. But for the project management, if you're interested in project management, we'll definitely put you through as regards the project management, because Petrina is also a project manager, so she'll definitely handle that.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, then we'll round up for today. Yeah, so we're excited. The next cohort will be opening up by the end of the month or next month. So Heels in Tech will be able to reach out and let you know some more information. But if you have any questions, feel free. You can always connect with me. I'm on socials and all of that. Oh, you're very welcome, Busayo. Thank you so much for attending today's session.
Thank you everyone for attending. I'm sure the participants reduced because this is the first time we are organizing it during the week. It was a Saturday, would have probably had more. But this is fine. They can always watch the recording. But for our students who are currently in the BA would relate more because they already started working on the waterfall process last week. So they would understand totally.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so.
Thank you so much, Petrina. It was very interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you, Petrina.
You're very welcome, Christy. Very welcome.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're all very, very welcome.
Thank you, Bisola.
Thank you. Thank you, Bisola, for organizing this. Thank you, Petrina.
Bisola, thank you for always. Thank you for what you do.
Welcome. You're welcome.
You're very welcome. Okay, everybody, have an amazing evening. So we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.